Hi, this is my reading session to improve my English. Today I'm going to read about a new interesting article from the Hugging Face, which is Open Responses What You Need to Know. I have not read this article prior, but let's hope. Okay, Open Responses What You Need to Know. It is published January 15, 2026. Okay. Open Responses is new and open inference standard initiated by OpenAI, built by the open source AI community, backed by the Hugging Face ecosystem. Open Response is based on API response and is designed for the future of agents. In this blog post, we will look at how Open Responses works and why open source community should use Open Responses. The area of chatbot is long gone. Agent dominate inference workloads. Developers are shifting toward the autonomous system that reason, plan, act over a long time horizons. Despite this shift, much of ecosystem still uses chat completion format, which was designed for turn-based conversation and falls short for agentic use cases. The open responses format was designed to address this limitation, but it is closed and was not widely adopted. The chat completion format is still de facto standard despite the alternatives. The mismatch between the agentic workflow requirement and inference motivates the need for the open inference standard. Over the coming month, we will collaborate with the community and inference provider to implement and adapt open response to a shared format practically capable of replacing chat completion. Open responses builds on the direction OpenAI has set with their Response API launched in March 2025, which superseded the existing completion and assistant API with the consistent way to go. Generate text, images, JSON structure output, create video content through the separate task-based endpoint, running agentic loops on the provider side, executing the tool call autonomously, and returning the final result. So, what is the open response? Open response extend and open sources the responses API, making it more accessible for builders and routing providers to interoperate and collaborate on the shared interest. See, some of the key points are stateless by default, supporting encrypted reasoning for the provider that required it, standardized model configuration parameter. Streaming is modeled as a series of semantic event, not a raw text or object deltas. Extensible via configurable parameters specific to certain model providers. What what do we need to know to build with open responses? We will briefly explore the code changes that impact most community member. If you want to delve into the specific, check out the open response documentation. Here is the open response documentation. Client requests to open responses. Client requests to open responses are similar to existing response API. Below we demonstrate the request to the open responses API using crawl. We are calling the proxy input that routes to the inference provider using open responses API schema. Here is the crawl. We are giving the URL from the new face version 1 responses. Content is application JSON authorization. We are providing the authorization for this, and we are using the open responses version is latest. That means it may be changed later on, but now it's still good. -cn and -demons data provided to the post request is model moonshot kimike to thinking Nebius. Input means we are providing model and only input explain the theory of the life. no other parameter was provided. Hmm. The client that already changes for the inference client and providers. The client that already supports the response API can migrate to open responses with a little effort. The made changes involves how reasoning content is exposed, expanded reasoning visibility. Open responses formalizes three optional fields for reasoning items: content means raw reasoning traces, encrypted content, provider specific protected content, and summary sanitized from the raw traces. Means all real responses is given the content. Encrypted content is per the server side. Means it server side provide the response. Yeah, backend provide the response, but all the reasoning is not provided. Only the final output is provided, and when we ask the another question following that follow up to that responses, we can model can model will look back the encrypted content and see the raw trace that is stored in the server side. Yeah, it means the reason traces is only available to the server, not to the user, but we can user can ask to the same ask follow up to the question which server will use the stored reason traces from the previous cycle or previous iteration to get the answer. Summary means the server can provide the summary of the responses rather than whole raw traces, which will be beneficial for them because they do not want their prompt or sensitive prompts style or how the model is reasoning to be made public. Yeah, they will do this kind of thing. Okay, let's get down. OpenAI models use to expose the summary and encrypted content. With open responses, provider may expose their raw reasoning via API. Client migrating from the provider that previously written only summary and encrypted content will now have opportunity to receive and handle the raw reasoning streams when supported by their chosen provider. Implementing richer state changes and payload, including more detailed observability. For example, hosted code interpreter can send specific interpreting state to improve the agent user visibility during the long running operation. For model providers, implementing the changes for open responses will be straightforward if they already adhere to the responses API specification. For router, there is now opportunity to standardize on the consistent endpoint and support the configuration option for the customization where needed. Over time, as provider continue to innovate, certain feature will become standardized in the base specification. In summary, migrating to the open responses will make the inference experience more consistent and improve the quality as undocumented extension interpretation and work around of legacy completion API are normalized in open responses. You can see how to stream reasoning chunks below. Means model is provided, input type is message, role is user, content is the explained photosynthesis, stream is equal to, that means here is the difference between the getting the open responses and using the open response and using OpenAI reasoning responses for reasoning deltas. Open weight or stream raw reasoning. Here the event is response dot reasoning dot delta. Delta means user asked where shall I eat. Step 1 means it provides the raw reasoning in delta. Model with encrypted reasoning send the summaries or sent as the convenience by OpenAI weight models. Response dot reasoning summary text dot delta. For raw reasoning there is reasoning only. For summary and encrypted reasoning there is reasoning summary text dot delta. Okay. Open responses for routing. Open responses distinguishes between model provider. those who provide inference, and routers, intermediaries who orchestrate between the multiple provider. Client now can specify a provider along with the provider specific API when making request, allowing intermediary router to orchestrate requests between the upstream provider. Tool. Open responses natively support the two categories of tool, internal and external. Externally hosted tools are implemented outside the model system. For example, client-side function to be executed or MCP server. Internally hosted tools are within the model provider system. For example, OpenAI file search or Google Drive integration. The model calls, executes, and retrieves the result entirely within the provider infrastructure, requiring no developer intervention. SOP is in loops. Open responses formalize agentic loop, which is usually made up of repeating the cycle of the reasoning, tool invocation, and response generation that enables models to autonomously complete the multitask. Here is the SOP is in loop. User, API server, LLM tool. User provides the request to the API server. API server gives the request to the LLM. LLM sends the sample message and provide the sample message and tool call by model. It responds to tool call. It then API server will call the tool using the responses from the LLM, and the result from the tool is given to the API, and loop is finished, and our output is given to the user from the API service. Image source. The loop operates as follows. Okay, the API response receives the user request and sample from the model. If API emits the tool call, API executes it internally or externally. The tools results are fed back to the model for continued reasoning. The loop repeats until the model signals the completion. Yeah, I was wondering where that is here. From here 5 years up to 6, it should have gone to the model, and the model gives the more generalized or inhuman response given by the tools in the more human readable format as per the question. Yeah, or it may trigger the another tools, or repeat the cycle and is in the model in itself. Okay, for internally hosted tools, the provider manages the entire loop, executing tool, returning result to this model, streaming the output. This means the multi-step workflow like source documents, summarize finding, then draft an image uses a single request. Client control loop behavior via max tool call to cap the iteration and tool choice to constrain which tool are invocable. Model tools max tool call 5 tools. Oh, this quite nice. So we can provide the tool which are function or the MCP server model can call, and what is the maximum time the model can call the tool, because if we do not specify the maximum tool calls, it is very hard for us developer to stop, to specify when to stop, because model can self loop in the manner because the response they got is wrong or some error has happened when calling the tool call, so it will go in finite loop which consumes the more token. Yeah, because all the tool calls for the parameter and functional parameter or the function of the tool call have to be passed from the LLM. Yeah. The responses contain all intermediate items, tool calls, results, and reasoning. Next steps. Open responses extends and improve the response API. providing richer and more detailed content definition, compatibility, and deployment option. It also provides a standard way to execute sub-agent loops during the primary inference call, opening up powerful capabilities for the AI application. We are looking forward to working with the open source team and the community at the large on the development of the specification, configuration, authentication. Yeah, you can try open responses with Hugging Face Inference provider today. We have early access to the Hugging Face species. Okay, openresponses.org is the website for the specification. The community which are supporting it. NVIDIA VLM, it is getting quite good support from the community. Okay, that's it for today, and thank you for watching. See you next time. Thank you.